Hello everyone, welcome back to part 3 of The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. The next month, William started to work on lighting his own house with the power of the windmill. For this, he needed a lot of electrical wire, but as usual, he had no money to buy any. Then, one afternoon, Gilbert and William were at his cousin's house, where he noticed long sections of copper wires being used as clothing lines. In fact, a whole spool of the wire was in the corner of the room. William managed to convince his cousin to sell the wire to him. He ran home with the wire spool and saw the windmill spinning in the distance. After he got home, he unspooled the wire until it reached his room and cut it with a knife. He then carefully climbed up the windmill, wrapped the plastic rag on his hand, and connected both wires. Inside his room, he made some final attachments, and in an instant, his room was illuminated. Pause. If you like my video so far, please consider liking and dropping me a sub. Thank you. William also had plans to get a car battery for storage of power and power his parents' and sisters' rooms as well. Then, when his cousin visited, he considered charging her phone with the windmill, but the windmill didn't produce enough energy. William continued researching and found out that he had to build something called a step-up transformer to increase the voltage of power his windmill produced. He saw in explaining physics that he needed to make two coils, the primary and secondary coils, which needed 200 turns of wire and 2000 turns of wire each. To create his own step-up transformer, William cut an E-shaped pattern in an iron sheet and started to wrap wire around the metal like crazy. He then connected the dynamo wires to the primary coil, while the secondary coil was wired directly to the prongs of a phone charger. His cousin stood next to him with her eyebrows raised, saying not to blow her phone up. William continued the process by plugging in the phone charger. When he did this, the mobile screen brightened and the charging bars moved up and down. Just before this, William was at his cousin Charity's house when he saw a car battery in the corner, which his cousin had found on the road. William had said that he would pay for the car battery later and went back home with the battery in his hand. Now armed with the car battery, William installed 3 more bulbs in his house. The bulbs connected directly to the battery with wires and operated on a parallel circuit. For the switches, William wanted a good non-conductive material that he could shape the way he wanted. To do this, he took a knife and carved out several round buttons from a pair of old flip-flops. Whenever he pushed the flip-flop button, the spoke and iron connected the terminals. The next step was to mount them inside small boxes William made from melted PVC pipe. This was easy enough for William, so he managed to finish it quickly. Finally, I can touch the wall and get light, said William excitedly. Having lights in his house was a good thing which had its disadvantages. William's batteries and wires were not of the best quality, and that fact scared him. He had already used up the good copper wire given to him by his cousin, so all he had left were bits of wire he found in the scrapyard, which he had fused together. The wire William had fused together had parts that weren't even meant to conduct electricity. Not only that, it didn't even have protectional plastic coating on it, so it sparked whenever electricity ran through it. To make matters worse, the termites in William's roof were having a party. Each day he would go to bed hearing their jaws snap, and he would wake up to see a pile of sawdust on the floor. Then, one afternoon, William came back after a huge storm from Geoffrey's house, only to find out that the support beams in his ceiling snapped. Because of this, William's floor was covered in dirt and wood. But the most terrifying thing was that the termites in the roof were also squirming around on his bed. William realized he had to do something quickly. That was when he noticed a pair of new chickens that they had bought recently. William lured them in by dropping a few termites outside of his room. When the chickens realized that a feast was waiting for them, they went crazy. The chickens started jumping all over William's bed, trying to eat as many termites as they could. Because of this commotion, William took a long time to realize that the poor quality wires he had set up burnt out. To combat this problem, he wanted to set up a fuse box whose job was to shut down the circuit if it overloaded. But this was tricky to build. He had to spend hours trying to position the coil and magnets precisely. Now, all he had to do was wait for the storm or cyclone to activate the breaker. Then, a few days later, he got his wish when he came back from Geoffrey's home. William's mother told him that a huge cyclone just came, and sure enough, the fuse box got activated. And it worked too, but there was only one downside. The wires got tangled in the cyclone winds, and he had to reset the whole circuit to make it work again. As William had no other option, he had to use this method. But a few days later, William ran into another problem. You see, so far, William had been using a bike chain as the pulley for the windmill. But there was one problem with this. The chain kept flying off the machine. But William's cousin Geoffrey told him that in mills and factories, they used a belt for smooth operation. Then, Geoffrey agreed to bring William a belt from where he worked to solve his problem. But meanwhile, William had to use a damaged belt an old man gave him. Then, Geoffrey returned with a belt that worked beautifully. Next January, the students returned to school at Cacciocolo. He still saw his friends for games of Bao and spent a lot of time with them. Because the windmill had been such a success, he kept trying to do something bigger. What do you think the next step in William's journey is? You guys will find out in part 4 of The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Thank you to everyone for waiting so long for part 3 of this series and also supporting me in my journey. This video really took a long time to make and it was hard work doing it. So please like and subscribe to motivate me to make more of these videos. That's all for now guys. Stay tuned and I'll see you later. Goodbye.